Hey, welcome back to Pagitt Radio, March 27th, 2011, 12:21. It's a beautiful day in the Twin Cities out there, if you can handle still being in the frozen tundra.
Yes.
I can't. I tell you, I got home, the snow threw me for a loop. And what I noticed is people stopped shoveling their driveways and stopped like people just said, that's it, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not doing it after whatever day we had. What was the St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
After St. Patrick's Day, I'm not shoveling anymore. So there's just snow just laying there. It's like everybody's the city of Minneapolis all of a sudden. Why move the snow? Just leave it. Yeah. We'll get it later. Hey, big news in the language department.
Okay.
Fresh bulletin that came out of the language department. I got it here in my hand. The phrase OMG that's so big in online life, the abbreviations, has now been included in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Wow.
OMG. Now, to a non-abbreviator, don't care for it.
That's right. You don't like abbreviations or contractions.
I don't like abbreviations or contractions. I think it's the territory of the lazy. Get that to you ASAP.
Yeah.
You can say as soon as possible. You got time. You're saving time. But OMG is big in the texting world, and it stands for
Oh my God.
Oh my God. That's what it stands for, right? OMG. And for some people who are the more careful, oh my goodness.
Oh
my goodness.
Of course.
Or oh my gosh.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, it has now moved in to being an official phrase in the Oxford Dictionary. Now, here's why that's a big deal. Because it reminds us that the English language is always changing. You might not know that there are 5 times as many words in the English language now as when Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. 5 times as many words. There are so many more ways to say things. Now, are there that many more experiences that humans have? I don't know. I don't know if we've had that many more experiences, 5 times as many. But language is dynamic and is changing and developing because what has changed is the ability for people to think about the experiences that they have. The world, for many of us, is becoming more complicated. It's becoming more complex. It's becoming more nuanced. We're getting a little greater handle on it.
Yeah.
So when a little phrase like OMG hits the big time, that's good news.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons it's hit the big time is because it was first used not in 2003, not in a text message from 1999, but in letters in 1917.
Like really?
Yes. Yeah. Dictionary compilers said that although the terms are associated with modern electronic communications, some are surprisingly old. The first confirmed use of OMG was in a letter in 1917. Things that people often think are new normally have a longer history, said Graham Diamond, the dictionary's principal editor for new words.
Oh, boy.
A principal editor for new words.
What a gig.
Well, yeah. Well, here's why I think that's important. Because I think in the world of religion, this is religious radio that's not quite right. Your positive, hopeful, optimistic, contrarian Christian radio. I think it matters because we need to have new ways to talk about things so that we can have a new world. If you get stuck using the same words, you're going to argue over the definitions of those words. And there are ideas for a new world that require us to have a nuance, a new word, a new way of saying something. And I think that it matters. So this came up particularly for me this past week because there's this whole little conversation going on in the religious and pop culture world. And it has to do with a book about hell.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about hell on this radio program. We've had people on who've talked about it. It's a big deal. You kind of got to talk about it, right? You can't be a religious person in this world and not deal with the big daddy problem.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, does God want people to go to heaven and not hell? And if they don't do what God wants them to do, is God going to punish them? That's a big question. Sure. I happen to think, and I've tried to argue in a variety of formats, in a book that I've written at Christianity Worth Believing, available at your local book retailer. I've tried to say it on this radio program. I've tried to say it on YouTube videos. I've tried to say it in personal conversations with people. That construct of God wanting to punish people and Jesus needing to save us from God, that isn't Christianity. That's not how you're supposed to tell that story. But Christianity's big and it's wide, and people get to tell it in any way that they want. And I think we need some new language around all of this, right? I think we need to have new ways to talk about these ideas because the old words, they're not working. Right? It's just simply not working. Sure. No one I know who uses hell and the idea of hell and the concept of hell feels very confident in it, feels very good about it. It's this made-up phrase and word that I think we need to move beyond. I think we not only need to drop the notion, I think we need to drop the word. And personally, I don't think we can drop the notion until we drop the word.
Wow. Well, how do we do that?
Well,
what other word would we use?
Here's how you don't do it.
Okay.
Let me come at it from the negative side.
Okay.
Here's how you don't do it. You don't do it by trying to redefine the word.
Sure.
Redefining of words, it doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
You don't get to just give new meaning to a word. What you're better off doing is creating a new word to go with the new idea. In fact, the way we got the modern English word hell was that people had to create a new word, the word hell, to explain the kind of torment, judgment in afterlife that they wanted to convey, because you're not going to get that out of the words that are used to make up the Bible. Bible words don't use hell.
Really?
We translate them into English. We take 5 or 7, depending on how you like to do this. Some people would even say 9 other words that are used in the Bible, and we retranslate those to the word hell.
So we kind of mush them all together, and we call that hell.
And made an entirely new notion, borrowed from other mythological traditions to convey this notion.
Well, that
in English language.
Seems kind of lazy.
And this happens all the time, because whenever you take a translation from one language into another, you have to recreate the meaning of that original language into your new language. So you're doing a thing called approximating, and this is what translators do all the time. Well, here's where this comes up.
Okay.
So a friend of mine has written a book called Love Wins. It became a big deal the last couple of weeks on the internet, right? And people are buying it. It was number 4 on Amazon, and good for Rob. Congratulations. It's a good book. Well, here's what he writes in his book, and here's where I disagree with him. He says this: we need a word that refers to the big, wide, terrible evil that comes from the secret hidden deep within our hearts, all the way to the massive society-wide collapse and chaos that comes when we fail to live in God's world and God's way. So he's saying we need a word that can capture the lived experience of people living disintegrated, non-harmoniously with God. We need something to describe that. And then he finishes the paragraph with, and for that, the word hell works quite well. Let's keep it. Now, I agree with that whole notion of we need to have something that describes this reality of the world that seems to be ripping apart at times. But I would disagree wholeheartedly that the word hell does that quite well.
Yeah, because that last part was kind of a...
I don't think it does it at all.
I thought he was going to come up with a new word, but then he's like, yeah, we'll just use the old word.
Yeah, let's just use the old word. Let's just use the old word that people already have meaning for. If people thought when they heard the word hell, like, is hell real? If they thought, I think we all live in a world that's incongruent with what we want and with what God wants. We know there's that frustration. We know around here we call it the cripes and the come on and you got to be kidding me. You scream out. And he says, well, let's just use the old world that really has to do with God wanting to punish people in eternal torment. We need new language, people. If you got new ideas, we need new language to go with them. That's what we're trying to do around here. We're trying to create a concept of a new way of thinking so that we can move ourselves forward so that we don't end up in the same old doldrums, same old places that we find ourselves all the time. There's a new world that needs to be created, and as Rummy said, we need a new set of words for it. Like Pagitt Radio on AM 950. Hey, we're going to be back with the Mommy Revolutionary after the break here. PagitRadio.com.
If you want a more empowered sex life, you'll find the tools and resources at